we're going to do that balancing thing I showed you about how
Right.
So just want to put the camera on there and figure out where its balance point is. When this is mounted to the post, that balance point should be almost right over the post. So just use a pen or whatever, nice flat rolly thing. Just try and find, obviously this way it's way back heavy, way front heavy. So you know it's right kind of in the middle. It's right about in there. So that's what I'm mark as my balance point for the camera on the plate. It's going to shift because we're going to add obviously cables and stuff as we move forward. But this is just a good starting point because what you want to do is take your dove plate, which connects the camera up to the stage when you're in it. That's actually what integrates the camera into the top of the system. And I want to put the dove plate, because the dove plate, this is your range of fore and aft movement once it's on the stage when you're balancing. So this mark you want to put in the middle of your dove plate. You don't want it like this, because then you're limiting how far forward you can go. You don't want it like this, because then you can't limit how. Because who knows if you're on a shoot and, you know, not so much here, but like let's say down the road you're doing stuff outside, and they're like, oh, we want to put a light on the camera, and then now you're like, oh, I can't move the camera back any further. Let's like disassemble the whole thing. So it's always a good idea to have this kind of in the middle of that. Put that mark dead center of your plate, so you have the full adjustment range of the dove plate. Let's try and shoot for that middle, like get that to the middle of the road, because I want to get that screw hole and that screw hole line up. That's pretty good. Try and get 2 screws in there. I remember back in the day I used to use 1 screw, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. So signal flow to your monitor, your viewfinder monitor on the rig, which is down here. You have to get one of your spigots on the back of your camera. With this monitor, I think only takes a normal composite video, or so you have to make sure that you got composite. And I don't think the way this is wired, it'll take a true HD SDI signal. But these old LDKs, that's all they put out is composite. So it's you're taking a cable out of the camera. Cable goes around the camera body, plugs into your video in on the front of the sled here. What that does, so now it comes in here, then it goes through the top stage and it's wired. It comes all the way down through the rig and it comes out right where this is coming out on that little RCA connector. Any of these video outs, that signal, once it comes in here, once you plug a signal in, it'll come out any of these video outs. But the way this one is wired out of the box, it's this RCA to BNC adapter. BNC cable that goes up to 1/8 inch video in on this particular monitor. So that was kind of a Frankenstein of a cable, or specialized cable that was made just for this. But it works, so we know it works. But just something to keep an eye. Always keep an eye on this, because this is kind of scary the way this hangs out off the side of the monitor. So just be cognizant of not hitting that and breaking that, because then we'll have to get you guys another monitor. And that's how the video signal gets to the monitor. Depending on how you're doing your cable run to your vest, usually the way I learned was to go bring it over the camera like so, and then you get a couple pieces of tape and have the cable come down as near to where the post is when you're done doing your balancing. So I'm just going to drape it over, and I'll put a piece of tape up top just to hold it in place for now. And then once we get close to balance, we'll see where we're at. But I always try and get it dead center because where your balance mark is. Because in theory, if it's coming down that way, it won't have a major effect on the fore and aft balance of the camera. So try and get everything in line with where you balance the camera out to center. So underneath, you've got different spigots on your lens under the servo for different options. There's the zoom, and then you can plug in a focus control. We're going to plug in the zoom, and we want to make sure this switch right here, it says zoom MS, manual or servo. You want it to be in servo, because what that enables is the power coming out of the camera, right, to power the motors in here, even though your zoom control is going to be down on your handle over here. If it's not, if it's in manual, it won't do nothing. So just one of those things. So this up there again. They'll do like one really kind of loose wrap around the post, like from the back they do it. I think it's from the back. Like they'll wrap it real loose around the post, so it's not being, the cable's not affecting the rig too much. Just to kind of keep everything out of the way. We'll just keep running it through that shoulder pad for now. Keeps it somewhat clean. It goes into here. This is always the tricky part, trying to get this connector to seat right. There you go. sometimes you have to hunt for it. It's like the opposite of where the cable's bent. But don't jam it on really far and start twisting it. Try just gently, spin it just as it makes contact. You'll feel when the teeth engage. I've seen people like have it jammed and they're like turning it and they end up breaking all the cable connections inside the connector. So it's one of those things to keep an eye out for. So that's on. That's on. You need to put your, whoop, that can stay out of the way. We need to put our video feed from our camera. It's going to go into the sled. So on these cameras, you'll take this top spigot out, but on the old 6000 like this, so this is just a normal, it's a composite video. Yep. On the newer camera, it's an HD out. And that's one thing we'll have to explore is that when you guys get the new Sonys, because I think they only have HD outs, I don't know if this sled can carry an HD signal. Is the monitor power and video feed right to the monitor? Mm-hmm. So it just plugs, on this one, it just plugs in that RCA in right there, the way it has it adapted, and that BNC goes up and converts, I think, into this. So it's a, no, like a, what is that, what do you call it, headphone size?
1/8 inch.
1/8 inch, yeah, it's whatever.
The mono, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, and make sure it's plugged into video. I just plugged it into audio. It's good. So one of those things to troubleshoot. Usually, some of these, this is one of those Steadicam things. On the older rigs like this, they have this weird. It's a high-rose connector, 4-pin high-rose that was a video out, and it would be a video out because this is the original monitor. It went on this rig. This rig used to have like a normal CRT monitor. Oh yeah. So that's one of the things that's a little different. But anyways, so hopefully you won't have any problems with these cables going cuckoo. We don't have to gaffer tape because this is a nice neoprene one. We can tighten it up and it won't shift around on us. We're going to start balancing. So here, this is your dock on the top of your C-stand. One side is the actual dock where the camera sits when you're not using it or when you're taking a rest or whatever. You hang it up on this side. On this side is your balancing pin. So you transfer the rig over to this side when you want to balance out the rig when you're doing your initial build-up. So just like you're picking up at normal, except you don't have your Steadicam arm to help you. So this is all manual labor. Pull your pin, hand on the post, hand on the gimbal. Just lift it up. Sometimes it can be a bit much. And you're just dropping your gimbal handle onto your balancing pin. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a tweak. So you can see it's all right. It's completely not in balance. It's a little top heavy. I'm going to take my little triax runner and just kind of, there's different schools of thought with this. Because you want to have the cable on there because obviously that's part of the weight that you're trying to balance out. But you don't want this loose end just hanging because it could hang up on the monitor down here, hang up on the sled when we're doing our drop time test. We'll get more to drop time in a second. So either just do two schools of thought or different ways. Sometimes I put it in my back pocket, but for right now I'm just going to put it, it just seems to sit nice over there on my dock just to keep it out of the way. All right, so we haven't done any balancing and we can see that this rig is completely not happy. It's totally top heavy and the camera's flipping upside down. So we know already off the bat it's kind of top heavy. The quick way to just get it some drop time, to get it so we know it's going to start falling, as I'm just adjusting my gimbal handle. And now when I do this, when you put the rig horizontal, I always initially make sure I have a hand on the camera. Just in case, if that's not connected, you don't want the camera to go flying. And I'm guilty of doing it myself, exactly. I'm guilty of doing this and not watching it and the camera, oh, and just grab it because I forgot to lock something in. This is still attached, so that'll just swing free, but the camera, the only thing that's holding is a couple cables, and potentially those will break, and the camera will break. Anyways, so we know it's top, we knew the rig was top heavy, so we'll go back to that. Let me see, we'll go back to that. So it's totally top heavy. So the camera's pulling itself over, over the bottom, and it's just going to flip over eventually upside down. I mean, that just shows you how top heavy it is. So the way I want to get drop time to it so the camera will swing down and hang, so the quickest way to do that is adjust your gimbal. And the way I do any kind of adjustment, just crack open your latch. And you could just slide it like this, manual labor, kind of just ram it. The best way I found to do adjustments is just grab your gimbal handle and just kind of do this. And it takes enough, it creates enough little non-friction, so to speak, to kind of make the gimbal handle slide. And you'll see that now it's got drop time. Just moving it, and I've only moved it, what's that? Maybe 3/4 of an inch. And just that shift of balance on the post has shifted the majority of the weight to the bottom. So now this rig is just dropping 1, 2, 3, to the bottom there. Ideally, you want it. Your drop time wants to be right around 3 seconds, but right now you can see it's like 1/1000, 2/1000. It's like 2 seconds. But I just want to now. I want to see where now that it's bottoming. I want to see where it's sitting. So now, if you look from this side, it's kind of tilted like this because we added the viewfinder from, well, you don't have to worry about that, but it's, you can see it's tilted to the left. So I'm going to adjust it with my side-to-side adjustment, which is up here on the top stage. There's a knob on this side. This is side-to-side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera over. You can see the whole camera shifting over a little bit. So now it's flying a little bit more level. And I got another level. Sorry, I'm walking away. Getting it close where just to get this to near level. So right there, the bubble's almost dead center. So we know this is level. And fore and aft were pretty good. Maybe we can go a little bit forward. So what I'm going to do is, there's two adjustments for fore and aft adjustments, which translate, fore and aft translate as if the camera's, when you're operating, is like this, or if it's like that. Additionally, when you're balancing, when you're first starting, we want the camera as level as possible. So I'm going to just adjust my fine adjustment for fore and aft, which is right here, because you can see this, this, what do you call that? Segmented scale, so to speak, where it's like it goes from 1 to 2 and 1 to 2 on this side. You want to have this arrow on your top stage in line with that 0. That way you have the most, when you're operating, you have the most adjustment on your fine adjustment. Your coarse adjustment is this lever over here, which releases the whole dove plate. So now the camera, this whole camera part, the whole camera moves independent on the stage, not just the little section here, which is more your fine adjustment. You can see the difference, how that part of the top stage moves when I move the knob. Mm-hmm. And then when this, if I do that, it's my coarse adjustment. So I'm going to just get that fine adjustment back to 0. So I have my maximum amount of travel in each direction. Lock it in. Oh, not lock it in. So I kind of want to see where this is sitting. Right now it's back heavy, so I'm going to shift it forward a little bit. Back heavy still. This is where you have to just be careful you don't let go of the camera too much, because you don't want it going flying. We're almost there. Good. So I'm just lock that back in. So now I'm pretty much, we know the rig's pretty much trimmed up, balanced and happy. Now here's some Steadicam ops. There's a thing called dynamic balance, where in theory, like if there was no cables on this, I could take the rig and just spin it, and if it's in dynamic balance, it'll just spin. It won't drift, it won't do this. And there's lots of ways to come up with dynamic balance. The only problem is the way we do TV in Steadicam, we have cables that hang off the rig, we have all this external factors that it's really hard to put one of our rigs in dynamic balance. It's a good ideal to achieve, but it's hard because we have so many changing dynamics in terms of the cabling on the rig. And if somebody wants to add a light to the rig, now you have to, I say dynamics is a great thing. Dynamic balance is awesome. It's just hard to really get the way we do things because we have to be cable. Anyways, enough on dynamic. Okay, so now we got the rig. We know it's balanced top. We're bottom heavy. We're leveled out, this way. We're leveled out that way. So now what I want to do is talk about drop time. Drop time is the amount of time it takes your rig to go from horizontal to vertical. So right now it's really quick. It's like, I think 2 seconds. So it's like 1/1000, 2/1000, maybe 2 1/4. 2 1/4 is pretty good for when you're starting out. The problem is, think of this as a pendulum. If it's too bottom heavy, when you start to move or stop to move, objects that are in motion are going to want to stay in motion. So if this isn't moving, when you first want to move and start your camera move, this is going to want to stay in place. If it's too bottom heavy, it's really going to want to stay in place. So this is kind of might lag behind. So this up here, when you push up here, it might have a tendency to do this before you get going. And when you stop, the inertia is going to want to carry the rig forward. So it's good. The things that's good about a good quick drop time is that when you're stopped trying to hold a static shot, if you have a lot of weight, it'll stay there. So it'll stabilize a lot, but when you're trying to move, it's harder to move it because you have all this weight way down. So I always say when you're starting, 2 seconds is okay to start with, but you really want to shoot for more of a 3-second drop time. Everyone's different. You can experiment it with how many ways you want, but I would say shoot for 3 seconds. So right now we know we're nowhere near 3 seconds. We're like 1/1000, 2 1/1000. All right. So what I need to do is I need to move a little bit more of my weight up. So the ways I can do that is I can either shorten my post or move my gimbal handle. So I think what I'm going to do for my quick adjustment is just move my gimbal handle. So I just crack this release right here, this black one. I'm just going to scoot my gimbal handle down. And what I'm doing is moving the whole sled up on the gimbal, or the balance point, so more of the weight's going to the top. So now it's going to be 1/1000, 2 1/1000. Still pretty quick. One more adjustment. And I'm just making little, like, 1/4-inch adjustments. Because that's all it really takes. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. That's getting close. One more. The problem is if you don't have enough drop time, it's the opposite of that inertia effect. Everything's going to get, it won't be very stable. It'll be very floaty. So there's not, there's not a lot of counterweight for this. And which is okay in certain instances. Like if you're running around chasing people, it's a lot nicer to have a rig that's very close to equal balance, so to speak, because you can throw it around and manhandle it, because sometimes you just need to manhandle it. But what we do in studio, we have to be very slow, very controlled, because in the studio there's all these horizontal lines that'll like register if you're losing your horizon, your tilt is off. So it's always good to, I say the 3 second is like the perfect golden rule for studio work. So now where are we at? Let's see. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So that's 3 seconds right there. Maybe a fat 3 seconds. Maybe I would like to have it a little bit quicker, but I think that'll work for what we're doing now. Put me on the other side of the box so that we do not do the yes. That's right. Slow down. Speed back up. But now the fact that you're going backwards now, I can change directions and you just go.
That's true.
So if I did one of these and stop, went like this way, it gives you a chance to get like.
You know, walking backwards in a circle isn't that bad.
As long as you're not going to trip anything, it's fine. Now slow down, put me on the other side of the box. There you go, now speed back up. Keep that framing, a tight framing. I'm going to speed up. Oh, now you have to speed up. Now put me on the other side of the box. Keep going, keep going, keep going.